It's that question, the one that keeps so many of us up at night. It feels like this massive fork in the road of life. Should I rent or should I buy my home? It's a huge decision, and it's loaded with financial pressure, a ton of emotional weight, and let's be honest, a whole lot of conflicting advice. So, how do you actually make the right call for you? Well, the most important thing to get right away is that there's no single right answer. It's not always better to rent, and it's definitely not always better to buy. In this explainer, what we're going to do is build a framework to help you think through this huge decision based on your own unique situation. So here's how we're going to tackle this. First, we'll get into the raw numbers. Then, we'll pull back the lens to look at the human factors in the global market and even peek behind the curtain at how homes are financed. And finally, we'll bring it all together to build a personal framework to help you decide. Sound good? Let's get started. All right, let's dive right in. Section 1, breaking down the costs. To really get a handle on the trade-offs here, we need to compare apples to apples. So let's walk through a real-world kind of scenario.
Okay, so picture this. Two identical houses right next door to each other. One is for rent at $1,500 a month, which works out to $18,000 a year. The other one is for sale for $400,000. This is our starting point.
Now, if you're the buyer, you're probably not paying that 400 grand in cash, right? So let's say you've worked hard and saved up a solid $100,000 for a down payment. That means you'll need to get a loan, a mortgage, for the other 300,000. Now, just to keep the math clean here, let's imagine you get an interest-only loan at 6%. Okay, so 6% of that $300,000 loan is $18,000 a year. This is the first big cost for our home buyer, money that goes straight to the bank. But wait, here's a really key factor. In a lot of places, the interest you pay on your mortgage is actually tax deductible. So let's say you're in a 33% tax bracket. That means you get to save about a third of that $18,000 interest payment on your taxes. So your effective interest cost, the money that's really gone from your pocket, is closer to $12,000. And of course, it doesn't stop with the interest, does it? As a homeowner, you've got property taxes. Let's peg that at 1% of the home's value, so $4,000 a year. And then there's upkeep, the leaky faucet, the roof repair. Let's budget another $2,000 for that. These are all costs the renter just doesn't have to worry about. Okay, so let's add it all up. The buyer's total out-the-door costs for the year, the money that is just gone for good, is that $12,000 in effective interest, plus $4,000 in taxes, plus $2,000 in upkeep. And that brings us to, $18,000. Okay, so now what about the renter? You've heard it a million times, right? Renting is just throwing money away. Let's actually put that idea to the test with our numbers. And this is kind of wild. In our scenario, the numbers are identical. The renter's $18,000 in rent is the exact same as the buyer's annual out-the-door cost. But hold on, the comparison doesn't end there. The renter actually has a hidden financial advantage. This is where the renter has a kind of secret weapon. It's a concept called opportunity cost. See, the home buyer had to lock up $100,000 in their down payment, but the renter didn't. They still have that cash, and they can put it to work. So let's say our renter invests that 100 grand. Even with a super conservative 2% annual return, that's an extra $2,000 of investment income they're generating. That's income the homebuyer is completely missing out on. So, when we put it all together, what does the final scorecard look like? The buyer's annual cost is $18,000. The renter's cost is their $18,000 in rent minus the $2,000 they made from investing. Their net cost is only $16,000. So in this specific case, purely based on the numbers, renting is actually the more economical choice. Okay, let's move on. Section 2, beyond the bottom line. Because let's be real, this decision is never just about the numbers on a spreadsheet. There's a huge human layer here. Feelings, lifestyle, what you want out of life, and that can be just as important. We're talking about huge emotional trade-offs. On the one hand, buying often brings this deep sense of stability, right? The freedom to paint the walls whatever color you want. Plus, your costs are predictable with a fixed mortgage, unlike rent, which can go up. But on the other hand, renting offers incredible flexibility. You can pack up and move for a new job pretty easily, big repairs aren't your problem, and you get to sidestep all the stress of a potential housing market crash. All right, Section 3, a global housing snapshot. We've looked at the personal numbers and the personal feelings. Now, let's pull the camera way, way back and see how this decision fits into a much bigger global picture. Okay, now this is fascinating. Just look at this chart. It shows that whether you're more likely to rent or own is heavily influenced by culture and even national policy. Check out Switzerland, where over 2/3 of people rent. It's just the norm. Then you look at a place like Russia, where homeownership is almost 90%. So the right choice is often just a reflection of the society you live in.
And then there's the massive elephant in the room, affordability. This chart really drives the point home. In 2021, it would take a skilled worker in Hong Kong over 20 years just to afford a small apartment. Now compare that to Zurich, where it's just over 5 years. This isn't just a personal finance problem. It's a huge economic reality that literally dictates the choices available to millions of people.
Okay, section 4, how homes are financed. Now, for a question you may have never really asked yourself, where do all these houses and apartments actually come from in the first place? To really understand the market, you got to take a quick look behind the scenes. Well, the answer starts with someone called a real estate developer. These are the people and the companies who take on the massive risk and complexity of actually building the places where we all live and work. They're a really crucial piece of this whole puzzle. So how on earth do they pay for these giant projects? Well, in a way that's surprisingly similar to how you or I would buy a home. They use debt, which is just like our mortgage, borrowing money they have to pay back. And they use equity, which is like our down payment, using their own money or selling off ownership stakes to investors.
Okay, we've gone from personal spreadsheets to global markets and back again. Let's wrap this up in our final section, your personal framework. How do you take all of this and actually make your own decision?
If there is one single thing to take away from all of this, it's this. It all depends on the context. There is no universal, one-size-fits-all answer. The right choice for you depends entirely on your context, the specific numbers in your local market, your own financial situation, your career flexibility, and what you personally want, stability or freedom.
So we'll leave you with this. Forget the spreadsheets and the market trends for just a moment and ask yourself a simpler but maybe a deeper question. In this really complex world of rising costs and crazy markets, what does the word home truly mean to you? Is it an investment? Is it a sanctuary? Is it just a temporary base camp? Your answer to that question might just be the best guide you have.